Jack had spent most of his life in a tiny cubicle, staring at a computer screen for hours on end. He had always dreamed of traveling the world, exploring new places and experiencing different cultures. But the monotony of his 9-to-5 job had left him feeling trapped and unfulfilled. One day, he decided enough was enough. He quit his job, sold his possessions, and set off on a journey of a lifetime. As he stepped foot on the first plane, he felt a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. The world was his oyster, and he was ready to explore every inch of it. He traveled to remote islands, climbed mountains, and witnessed breathtaking views that he had only ever seen in pictures. Every day felt like an adventure, and he felt alive in a way he never had before. Despite the beauty of his surroundings, Jack quickly realized that the best part of his journey was the people he met along the way. He made friends from all corners of the globe, each with their own unique stories and experiences to share. They would sit around campfires, exchange stories, and laugh until the early hours of the morning. He learned that there was more to life than working, and that by traveling, he was discovering a part of himself he never knew existed. But with every new friendship, there came a heartbreaking goodbye. Saying farewell to people he had grown to love was one of the hardest things Jack had to endure. But he knew that this was the nature of traveling. You meet people, you share experiences, and then you move on. It was bittersweet, but he wouldn't trade those moments for anything. One day, while exploring a small village in the south of France, Jack met a girl. Her name was Sophie, and she was a traveler like him. They hit it off immediately, sharing stories over glasses of wine and long walks along the coast. Jack was smitten, and for the first time in his journey, he felt a deep connection with someone. Over the course of a few days, Jack and Sophie had explored the village and the surrounding areas. They hiked to nearby cliffs that offered stunning views of the Mediterranean Sea and the rocky coastline. They visited local markets, sampling cheeses, meats, and fruits they had never tasted before. They even stumbled upon a small vineyard and spent an afternoon learning about the winemaking process and tasting different wines. As they shared their stories, Jack learned that Sophie had been traveling for years, and her nomadic lifestyle had taken her to every corner of the world. She shared tales of her adventures, and Jack listened intently, in awe of her bravery and wanderlust. But as their time together came to an end, Jack knew that they would have to say goodbye. Sophie was on her own journey, and they both knew that their paths would eventually diverge. Jack was heartbroken, but he also knew that this was the price he had to pay for his new way of life. He hugged Sophie tightly, promising to keep in touch, and watched as she walked away. It was a painful moment, but Jack was grateful for the memories they had shared. As Jack continued his journey, he realized that he was living life on his own terms. He was no longer confined by the expectations of others, and he was free to explore the world as he saw fit. He learned that time was his most valuable asset and that he had to use it wisely. He could always make more money, but he could never make more time. Jack's journey took him to places he had never imagined. He saw the northern lights in Iceland, hiked through the jungles of South America, and met people from all walks of life. He had experienced both the beauty and the heartbreak of traveling, but he wouldn't have it any other way. The first few months of his travels were filled with excitement and wonder, but soon, Jack began to feel the weight of his decision. He missed his family and friends, and he was starting to feel lonely. He had never been away from home for so long, and he realized that he had taken the people in his life for granted. One day, while hiking through the mountains of Peru, Jack received a call from his mother. His grandmother had passed away, and the funeral was scheduled for the following week. Jack was devastated. He had always been close to his grandmother, and he had missed her final moments. He considered flying home for the funeral, but he knew that it would be costly and time-consuming. He felt guilty for not being there for his family, but he also knew that he couldn't give up his dream of traveling. As he continued his journey, Jack found himself thinking about his grandmother often. He had never experienced such a profound loss before, and it made him question the choices he had made. Had he made the right decision in quitting his job? Was it worth it to see the world if it meant missing out on important moments with his family? These thoughts weighed heavily on Jack, and he found himself struggling to enjoy his travels. He decided to go back home. At his grandmother's grave, Jack felt overwhelmed with emotion. He wished that he had spent more time with her, but he also knew that she would have wanted him to follow his dreams. He could feel her presence urging him to explore the world, to see the places she never had the chance to visit. He remembered the stories she used to tell him of exotic lands and adventurous travels. He knew that she had lived vicariously through him, and he didn't want to disappoint her. As he stood there, lost in thought, a sudden gust of wind blew through the cemetery, scattering leaves and petals all around him. It was as if his grandmother's spirit was giving him a sign, a final blessing before he set out on his journey. With tears in his eyes, Jack whispered goodbye and promised to make her proud. And with a heavy heart, Jack picked up his backpack and continued his own journey. He didn't know where he was going next or what he was going to do next, but he knew that he was happy, and that was enough. And he knew that he was going to make the most of every moment, just like she would have wanted him to.